Hello and welcome. Merry Christmas to those of you who have celebrated this past 2 days. I hope you had a wonderful time with your family and loved ones, all in good care. I am those of you who just took off. It's wonderful. Hopefully, you had a time to relax and to get some work done, especially if you're going through this process of applying while managing everything else. So this is our last session for 2024. We are going to be focusing on deferred MBA candidates who are working for that April deadline for deferred applications, at least for most schools. As usual, we have a few slides prepared to cover the different segments or a few points that I wanted to make today. Of course, I can talk about, applications for hours and hours. So we're just going to keep it at 30 minutes and happy to answer any questions that you may have. If you do have questions, I ask that you write them in whichever platform you're joining us from in the comment section. We won't be putting your name on the screen, so this won't be saved in the future, but I can definitely read out loud the question and answer it here with you live. If you are watching this as a replay, definitely write your questions in the comments. So this way, we do monitor the past videos, and we can answer those questions as well. If you are a deferred candidate and are looking about strategic ways to proceed with your applications and are looking for expert advice, you can reach out to discuss our process and how we can support you in this very important next journey. You can do that. There will be a link on the screen, and if you go to cadmissions.com, you can also request a free consultation through the main page. So those of you who do not know me, if you're not subscribed to our channels, definitely subscribe so that you can be notified about our future events. And this way you don't miss out any of our lives, but also when we upload new things, you can be notified of those as well, so that, when you have the time to go and watch our recordings, you'll have that notification, that reminder, essentially. So let me just explain a little bit about CA Admissions, who we are, and what our focus is, and then from there we'll dive into the presentation. So CA Admissions is a boutique admission coaching firm focused on tailored coaching, personalized coaching, one-on-one with individuals. Our focus is to understand the applicant's journey to date, be able to help them craft a narrative that is indicative and captures the experiences that you've had, as well as, in a lot of cases, help you craft a future that is in alignment with your authentic self. We, as a professional firm, also look at what business schools are looking for, what are the patterns that they look for in successful candidates, and try to bridge the individual applicant's journey with the target business schools. We focus, as I mentioned, one-on-one working with candidates, but we do have a very comprehensive process, making sure that there are essentially no stones unturned in terms of doing all the things that you can do that's within your control to make sure that you have the highest chances of gaining admission. Who am I? I'm the founder of CA Admissions. I have founded with that premise of making sure that individuals that are going through this process do not feel that they are sort of like a cog in a machine, but rather they have a very individualized approach to coaching. Of course, we do have our process, our proven process that has worked, and we kind of guide you through the process, but we recognize that every individual has a unique story, and we work with individuals along the way. I've been a coach essentially for the past 8 years. I've worked at a hedge fund and private equity, as well as come with a background with an academic training from NYU and Yale. All of these trainings Our professional as well as our academic training are really helpful in the process of guiding applicants through this journey. And we do this really intently in terms of, recognizing those individuals' stories and helping them capture that story in a way that is authentic to them. We have a 94% placement rate, which means 94% of clients we work with gain admission, so at least one of their target institutions, through our proven process. So let's dive right into the presentation. So today we're going to talk briefly about what are deferred MBA programs. So just setting the stage. What is the deferred MBA landscape, and then some of the approaches that you need to think through to make sure that you are not working harder, but rather smarter in the process. So let's dive right in. And like I mentioned, I know people come in and out, but if you have questions that you want answered during this live, whether you can stay or have to leave and come back later, definitely write your question in the chat, and I'll be monitoring my second screen over here so that I can try to answer within the time frame that you are submitting the question. But if you have to jump off, you can always come back and listen to the response. All right, so what are deferred MBA programs? Deferred MBA programs are reserved for essentially college seniors or master students in their final year of study. Most schools accept college seniors only, or not only, but rather that's like the primary focus, the target of the deferred MBA, where some schools also accept master students in their final year of study. So there is a nuance, there are some nuances there that you have to keep in mind when you are selecting your target business school. These deferred programs allow you to reserve a seat at a top tier MBA program to allow you to then later on start the journey while still initially navigating the job market. It does allow you for flexibility in terms of your career, so you can gain experiences in the traditional sense, so like consulting, financial services, those kinds of roles. But you can also take professional risks during this 2 to 5 year period that you are in deferred. In that deferred period, it allows you to take those professional risks so that you can really build an authentic career for yourself that is in alignment with recognizing what the opportunities are in the market, and come to the MBA program when you're ready to get started with that professional setting and move into the next phase of your professional development. Deferred MBA programs are not just for business school majors. You can be an engineer, you can be an artist, you can be, interested in politics, any area that you are interested in terms of your undergraduate studies or your master's studies, you are eligible for a deferred MBA. The goal here is that you have professional business aspirations in the future. So if you're studying politics and you want to be a politician, maybe an MBA is not necessary for you, right? You may want to focus your academic training in areas that further align with your future. But if you see yourself building a business around a governmental entity or something along those lines, then an MBA can definitely be very helpful on your journey. So the idea here is that your ultimate goal, your end, at least from where you see it at the moment, should be something that involves business for it to make sense to apply to a deferred MBA program. Where you're coming from in terms of your career, it's in terms of your academic career, it's not really that important. You will be trained on the business side of business. The idea here is that you have the aspiration to want to make a change in the world from a business perspective. So why deferred MBA programs are fiercely competitive? They do have low acceptance rate. There's a very small number of students that are accepted in deferred programs. So I think Wharton has like 150 students that are accepted into the Deferred program. And you compare that to the 1,000 or close to 1,000 students that they accept in the traditional MBA program, there's obviously a very stark difference. It ranges in terms of schools that accept deferred candidates anywhere between 5 to 20% acceptance rate. So obviously this depends on which schools you're applying to. Stanford has 5%, 5-6%. Wharton has a close to 20% acceptance rate. So it really does vary between schools. The candidates you are competing with are individuals who have exceptional academic backgrounds, who have demonstrated leadership, and who have a really strong career vision. So it's really important if you want to compete with these candidates, then you have to exude and exemplify this through your experiences. They are looking for individuals who have clear expectations in terms of where they see themselves going, a compelling narrative as to why they want to do it, and a strategic application that captures their entire story throughout the different components of the application. So whether that's the letters of recommendation, whether that is your resume, essays, and even short answer questions in the application portal, all of those actually are important in the process. They would not be asking you to answer questions if those questions are not taken into account in terms of the application process. So really important to keep those in mind. And I know the audience that I'm speaking with, especially those of you who are in college, I've been there. And I recognize that sometimes you're like last minute, the night before you're submitting assignments, for your class work. This should not be approached in that same way, because obviously you can only do this once. You can only apply to the deferred program one time, because you are only a college senior once, or a master student in your final year of study once, right? You can reapply again in the future once you have years of work experience, but you only have one chance of getting in with this as a deferred candidate. So what are the key attributes of a successful candidate? Obviously, academic excellence. At this point in your career, you don't have work experience to counter your academic performance. So academic excellence is really important, and this comes through with your GPA in your school. And the GPA, just recognize that there's an element of your institution's rigor that also plays a role into the GPA. So if you have a lower GPA but you are attending an Ivy League, for example, the rigor there, it's slightly different than in the United States attending a community college and having a 4.0. It's just different, right? So that does play a role in the application. They're also looking at your test scores, so the GMAT or the GRE. Those play a significant role in your academic aptitude. And if you look at class profiles for these schools, you will see that they have really, really strong academic performance. They are also the candidates that are successful in this process are those who have the capability to demonstrate leadership. This comes through from impact that you have been able to make through your different initiatives that you've been involved in. So think through your college experience, extracurricular, so clubs or anything along those lines that you've been involved in. Or perhaps you have been contributing to the community more at large, so outside of school per se, demonstrating that you are not just a member who shows up and does what they're told, but rather you are an engaged citizen, quote unquote, of that community. That is indicative of leadership potential. So those are the components that make for a successful candidate. Career goals are really, really important in this process. And I definitely cannot stress enough how important having clear post-MBA plans, as well as the journey to your MBA and even long-term are. they are looking for individuals who have clarity in terms of where they're going. Because again, this is a very small pool of candidates, and they're looking for individuals who are looking to take professional risks, as well as secure their MBA early in the game, essentially. And of course, from the candidates that we have helped here at C Admissions get through the deferred MBA, the ones that have been successful have been able to demonstrate authenticity. And authenticity doesn't come through by obviously showing, all of your laundry. Like, that's not about authenticity, sharing every detail, but it's really being strategic, but also being authentic in terms of what matters to you, what values do you bring to the table, how you think. And these are elements that you can't, I haven't yet seen one be able to do it in a short period of time. It does require reflection and iteration and development of your narratives throughout all of the pieces of the application. How to approach your deferred MBA program. So one of the first things that I talk to applicants when they're going through this process is, in order to get to where you want to go faster, you have to build a strategy. You need to first and foremost know where you want to go, right? So why are you doing an MBA? Where is your end goal? That is the most important component. Without that story, it becomes very difficult to justify anything, to tell a cohesive story in any particular way. The reason is because we don't know where you're going, so we're not sure why are we reading what we're reading. And oftentimes, because you are a college student still exploring, the experiences of exploration can come off disjointed in your application. So it can come off as essentially like, we're not sure where this person is going, so the story has no end, therefore we do not know why all these moves were taking place. So slowing down to actually build a plan of your goals, right? And then build a plan for each piece of the application is one of the most important phases of the process. If you want to move fast, you can do that if you have a plan later on. So start slowly by developing your plan of action, and then that will help you move faster with everything else. Outside of knowing your why, you want to craft essays tailored to each program, recognizing what they're looking for in candidates and how your experiences match what they're looking for. Like, this is part of storytelling, part of marketing your own narrative to business schools. You want to showcase, good morning, I saw a message, so good morning, welcome. And you can definitely call me Susan, please. So you want to craft and tailor your essays and your short answer questions. Keep in mind essentially what the schools are looking for. A story has multiple angles. What is the angle that you're telling your story? You want to showcase your leadership. You want to showcase your personal achievement, irrespective of the angle you're taking. Those are very important pieces. So again, recognizing when you're writing an essay, what kind of leader do you want to showcase? So thinking strategically, what are you putting into place will help you move or work smarter and really not working harder. Because if you have no directionality and you're just writing a story for writing a story's sake, that's actually working harder. You may feel that it's not, but it actually is, because what oftentimes happens is you have to rewrite that, which means you're taking, again, time to restructure an entire essay, restructure the story. So first build a plan and then start crafting, because the crafting then becomes so much easier when you have a plan as to what are you going to say, what are the characteristics that you want to communicate, what are the achievements, what's the individual personality that you're communicating to the business schools, and then obviously start the writing process. In terms of letters of recommendation, they play a huge role in the admission process. They're the only voice outside of your own that the admission team committee receives in terms of your application. So you want to make sure that the recommenders are also supporting your full narrative, your full story. And it's not only just writing examples of, your experience with or their experience with you, but rather they're strategic as well. You can definitely guide them on terms of where you're going, in terms of, reminding them of experiences that you've had with them. Recognize, of course, that your manager will have, in most situations, or has had many different people that they have managed, and they may not remember all the minutiae details of your own story, right? So you definitely want to play an active role in the letters of recommendation. And then you want to manage your timeline. If you're applying for early April, which is the deadlines for the most deferred applications, this is the time that you need to plan. Like, you are already kind of on the tail end of when you need to get started if you haven't gotten started yet with your application. So definitely build a timeline, when you're going to do, what you're going to be doing, how are you going to be starting to craft the essays and every component associated with it, because you will need more time than you initially assume, because it's a process of writing. This is not a mathematical formula. This is a process of even discovering of your own self along the way. Okay, so I see a question here. Is holding a leadership position necessary to show leadership capabilities? No, it's not necessary to hold the leadership position, but you want to showcase, like, what are the characteristics of a leader, right? It's someone who takes ownership of the thing that they're working on. So even if you are not a leader quintessential by title, you can demonstrate that you take ownership, that you have made an impact, that you know your role in a given group, in a given setting, and that you have helped move that to the next phase. Right? So that depends obviously in which environment you're in. But let's say you're working in a team project for one of the clubs on campus, and each person, like, you are collectively working towards a common end, and each person has its own responsibility towards it. No one is per se the leader, or you are not the leader. You have a role in executing that project to completion. So capture the role that you play and how you go about resolving the problems along the way that impeded you in having a smooth transition. So dive deeper into the narrative and capture, obviously, how you have been able to make an impact in that setting. Excellent. All right. So you want to present your unique value proposition to the business school. So why should they accept you and not the next person whose resume, whose essay, whose story looks similar to yours, right? This is really important. This is like, I've heard of a story. I haven't personally seen it with my own eyes, so this is a sort of like a secondhand account. But they're twin, two applicants who are twins, have had the same exact experiences, applied to business school, and had obviously very similar applications. Neither one was admitted into the same school. So they were admitted to different schools, but there is no overlap. And what does that tell me, at least as a admission coach, is that there is an element of two being too similar, right? There is no need for two same exact stories. So how can you differentiate your story from the next person who has done similar things to you, right? So this is where your unique value proposition comes into play. You want to really dive deeper into your narrative, your experiences, why you have done what you have done. If you hear background noises, my puppy on the end having a bad dream, unfortunately. All right, so you want to capture your milestones, your experiences, the lessons that you've learned along the way. Don't shy away from diving deeper into the narrative, even if it sounds too simple. And that's because your unique experience is your own. You definitely do not need to be thinking that, oh, someone else is going to have the same experience. Even if someone else has the same experience, your unique experience to that experience is unique to you. So you want to capture your thinking process because that will help the admission team differentiate you from the next person. Remember that your future shouldn't be, picking something out of a hat, right? It has to be tied to your background, to your story, to something you've experienced. So you want to give yourself time to reflect and make sure that you have tied your narrative to your aspirations. Again, this is about not redoing elements in your application, because I have oftentimes when I work with candidates who have started the application process on their own, and then they recognize the hurdles, and then they sign up to work with C Admissions. And one of the common things that I see is that we actually have to rewrite everything. We have to redo everything because they were not approached strategically. And it's to no fault of their own. It's just part of the process, right? And if you're doing this for the first time, it is very challenging in terms of recognizing how each piece plays a role into the next piece of the application. But this is components that obviously will help you work smarter. And of course, you want to emphasize growth and impact over time, over the experiences that you have had. Okay, let's see. There's another question in the chat. Does having over a decade of work experience automatically disqualify a candidate for a 2-year program? No. So this is not a deferred program. So deferred program, it's only once. You can only do it once. You can only apply once here. But if you have over a decade of work experience, you're not automatically disqualified. You want to demonstrate why you need a 2-year full-time MBA program. And obviously there's a strategic approach to that application, because you don't want to overemphasize your leadership, because if you do that, then they will automatically assume that you are overqualified. You're not going to learn anything from your peers who have 5 years on average work experience. So definitely want to approach that slightly differently, but you are not automatically disqualified. There are some schools that prefer that have clear cuts in terms, because they have different programs that they offer, and they have they're trying to fill those different slots. So they may have preferences, but it's not a general rule. Hopefully that answers. Okay, in terms of what we have seen here at C Admissions is the individuals who start early, who give themselves time to refine their application, are the ones who have stronger applications. I think that's very elementary, but I feel sometimes, especially for college students, that we need to remind you of that. Starting early will give you more time to refine your application. You also, everyone that goes through the program, whether you are a traditional MBA candidate or a deferred candidate, you are managing the application in addition to the other responsibilities that you have. So if you're managing classwork, you're managing taking the test, you're managing finalizing your year, right? There's just a lot of things that you have on your plate in addition to the application, which is very taxing in your narrative, like in capturing your narrative. So starting early will actually help you in terms of giving you the time to reflect, to craft, to reflect, to take the actions that you need in terms of moving your application forward. So start now, essentially. You want to tailor your application, as I mentioned earlier, to each school's specific values. Every school, while I hear this way too often that, oh, they all sound the same. Actually not. They're not the same. Each school has its own unique value, the own unique value proposition that they give to each of the candidates, and you have the same thing. So you want to make sure that you're matching the two. Now, don't make it obvious, because if it's obvious, it's like, you're telling me what I want to hear as opposed to who you are. That is an inauthentic application. So to be able to capture your authentic self, you definitely want to make sure that you are being authentic in the process and finding the areas, finding the elements that make you uniquely you, also tie with what values are of that target institution. And then, of course, focus on authenticity that rather than over polish. If you come across overly polished, it's not necessarily helping you in your application. I know that I spent over a month rechecking my own application because I felt that, if I missed a comma, I would be rejected by Yale. And I submitted my application at the last hour. Because of this, I had the application ready a month in advance. And I read it like a month later, and I saw that I had missed a comma. I was still accepted. But the point that I'm trying to say is over polish is not necessary the thing that is going to get you in. It's really about authenticity that makes a really strong candidate. In terms of, I know we're running over time, but I think I have 2 slides left, so I'm going to try to go through those quicker. So some of the support tools that you can use in this process, school resources, they always have events and activities that they're hosting. There's also a lot of online forums that you can participate in, but take everything with a grain of salt, because no one knows your story, especially in these sort of like open forums. No one's going to sit there and, talk to you and get to know your story and help you craft it and tell it in a particular way. You will get kind of the gist of what's happening. What are some of the things that people are talking about in terms of their applications and experiences. You want to, the next better tier is speaking with peers and mentors and get their feedback in terms of them knowing you, in terms of then helping you see another side of yourself that you may be blinded to seeing, right? This is natural human experience. And then, of course, you can work with a coach to help you, who is going to actually sit with you to get to know your story and get to guide you through this entire process. What are the narratives? What are the experiences that you have? And how can we communicate those in a way that will be authentic to you in your own experiences, but also in alignment with what business schools have to offer. What are some of the things that the coach can help you with? Obviously, avoid the common mistakes and they'll save time. Personalized guidance on your essays, on your whole application, on your goals, your interviews, and like the entire strategy. Expert insights into maximizing your application's impact. So making sure that your entire narrative is purposefully put together. And of course, confidence in navigating this very, very high stakes process. This is life-changing. I've personally experienced a life-changing education, and I recognize, and I hear this all the time from past clients, these have been transformative, life-changing experiences that you get to experience at a top, business school, at a top graduate institution. So definitely making sure that you give yourself the highest probability is oftentimes why people hire a coach, but also making sure that you are doing the things that you need to be doing by certain periods of time, and recognizing that there are elements that you must take into account to do. So, for example, speaking to students, that's not something, yes, you can definitely speak to students, as many as you want, on your own. But when you know what kind of questions you need to be asking, because those questions will help you get the right information that you need for your application, it is actually saving you time, because you are not going back and forth time and again to just get information from students, right? So that is a small little speck in the grand scheme of things that a coach can help you navigate. So if you are interested in discussing how C Admissions, our process here at C Admissions, and ways that we can support you, definitely reach out to schedule a consultation. It's free. We talk about what your objectives are, what your experiences have been, where you're looking to go, and we share our own process. And if there's a match between the two, if we're in alignment, then we can talk about, of course, moving forward. Next week, which is going to be the beginning of a new year, we will be continuing this conversation on deferred candidates, and we'll talk further about a consultant's, a coach's role in the MBA application journey. Definitely share or join us if you are applying. But if you know someone who is applying, definitely we want to share the event with them as well. Thank you for staying longer than our usual time. I appreciate you, and I wish you a wonderful new year with a lot more great opportunities and successes, more than 2024. So I will see you in the new year.